I wasted most of my life trying to be seen. My name is Harold Whitaker. I'm 82 years old, and it took me more than 8 decades to understand that the people I worked the hardest to impress were the ones who mattered the least. I didn't realize it at the time, of course. When you're young, you call it ambition, you call it drive. You tell yourself you're building something important, and maybe you are, but I built it for the wrong audience. I grew up in a small house with thin walls and big expectations. My father believed a man's value was measured by what others thought of him, not by how he treated his family, not by how he slept at night, but by the nods he got in public, by the compliments, by the reputation. I absorbed that lesson early. When I was 25, I got my first management job at a manufacturing company. I remember the first time my name was printed on a memo that went out to the entire department. I kept a copy of it in a drawer like it was some kind of award. I wanted the supervisors to notice me. I wanted the executives to remember my name. I wanted to walk into a room and feel important. And slowly over the years, I built a life around that feeling. Long hours became normal. Missing dinners became acceptable. Canceling weekends became necessary. Every promotion felt like proof that I was becoming someone worth admiring. What I didn't see was what admiration costs. My wife, Eleanor, used to wait up for me in the early years. She would sit at the kitchen table with a book open but unread, listening for the sound of my car pulling into the driveway. I would come in talking about quarterly numbers and new contracts, and she would smile and nod. I thought she was proud of me. Maybe she was. But what she wanted was not my resume. I remember one particular evening, our daughter had a school recital. She was 10 years old and had a small solo, just a few lines in a spring concert. I had promised I would be there. I meant it when I said it. That afternoon, my supervisor asked me to stay late to prepare for a presentation. He didn't demand it. He didn't threaten me. He just said it would look good. That was enough. I told myself there would be other recitals, other moments. I told myself I was doing this for my family, that everything I was building would benefit them. When I got home that night, the house was quiet. Eleanor had left the program from the recital on the kitchen counter. My daughter's name was circled in blue ink. I stood there looking at it, feeling a strange mix of guilt and justification. I chose the presentation. I chose the nod of approval from a man who retired 5 years later and probably never thought of me again. My daughter remembers that night. She's 54 now and she still remembers it. The people I strained to impress moved on with their lives. They got promoted, they relocated, some of them passed away. A few might remember that I was reliable, that I worked hard. But my daughter remembers an empty seat. That's the math of it. One group forgot me, the other never did. In my 40s, I was invited to join a private business association. It was exclusive, selective, and I felt like I had finally entered the room I'd been trying to reach my whole life. I bought better suits. I practiced how I spoke. I learned which wines to order. I studied how to belong. At home, I was tired, short-tempered, distracted. My son once asked me if I could help him build a bookshelf for a school project. I told him I didn't have time and suggested we just buy one instead. Efficiency over experience, that was always my logic. Years later, he told me that wasn't about the bookshelf. It was about me choosing something else again. I wish I could tell you there was one dramatic moment when I suddenly understood all of this. There wasn't. Realizations at my age don't come like lightning. They arrive slowly, like a fog lifting. Mine started about 3 years ago. I had already retired. The company gave me a plaque, a catered lunch, and a speech about my dedication. I stood there smiling, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. It felt good in a familiar way. 2 weeks later, my phone stopped ringing. Not completely, but enough. No more urgent emails. No more invitations to strategy meetings. No more executives asking for my opinion. The world I had bent my life around moved forward without me, smooth as ever. I remember sitting in my living room one afternoon, the house quiet, and realizing that all the urgency I had lived under was temporary, manufactured, replaceable. I was replaceable. That thought hurt at first. I had built my identity around being needed in those rooms, around being respected by people whose approval I had chased for decades. But here's what shook me even more. One Sunday, my family came over for dinner. The grandchildren were loud, running through the house, leaving fingerprints on every surface. My daughter was in the kitchen with Eleanor, laughing about something. My son was asking me about my garden. No one asked about my old titles. No one mentioned the association I had worked so hard to join. No one cared how many employees I had once supervised. They cared whether I was present. And for the first time in a long time, I was. That's when the truth began to settle in. The people I had tried so desperately to impress were evaluating me on performance, on output, on status. The people who loved me were evaluating me on presence. And presence was the one thing I had withheld the most. I don't think ambition is wrong. I don't think hard work is wrong. But I confused admiration with love. I thought if enough important people respected me, I would feel secure. What I didn't understand is that admiration is conditional. It lasts only as long as you're useful. Love is different. It asks for your time, your attention, your listening, not your resume. At 82, I no longer wake up worrying about who is ahead of me or whether someone else is getting recognition I deserve. Those thoughts used to dominate my mornings. Now I wake up thinking about whether my granddaughter's soccer game is this Saturday or next. That shift feels small. It isn't. A few months ago, I apologized to my daughter for missing that recital. I don't know why it took me more than 40 years to say the words. Pride, maybe. Or fear that bringing it up would reopen something. She listened quietly. Then she said she forgave me a long time ago, but she was glad I finally understood. That sentence stayed with me. I finally understood. Not because I read it in a book. Not because someone lectured me. But because the noise faded. The applause faded. The competition faded. And what was left were the people who had been there the whole time. If I could sit down with the younger version of myself, the 35-year-old man polishing his shoes before another networking dinner, I wouldn't tell him to quit his job. I wouldn't tell him not to succeed. I would ask him one question. Who are you doing this for? If the answer is people who will forget your name once you leave the room, be careful. If the answer is fear of being ordinary, look closer. If the answer is proving something to strangers, understand that strangers do not carry your coffin. Your family does. That may sound blunt, but at my age, bluntness is a form of kindness. I spent decades trying to secure admiration from people who evaluated me like a quarterly report. Meanwhile, the people who loved me were waiting for a conversation, a shared meal, a simple afternoon together. I can't get back the recitals. I can't rebuild the bookshelf with my son when he was 12. Time does not refund those transactions. But I can sit at the table now. I can answer the phone when my daughter calls. I can show up. And I do. At 82, I finally understand that the room you fight the hardest to enter is often the one that empties the fastest. The small room at home, the one with familiar voices and worn furniture, is the one that stays. If you're younger than me and listening to this, I won't tell you to abandon your dreams. Just make sure the people you're trying to impress are the ones who will still be there when the applause stops. Because one day, it will stop. And when it does, you'll want to be surrounded not by admirers, but by people who never needed you to perform in the first place.